How you doing, guys, and welcome to Development Diary episode 8 for the 4th of December 2017. So we've got some major changes that mightn't be very apparent straight away. I'll just go full screen here. So we're focusing on this small portion of the village here. The engine has been updated to the latest build, 4.18. So with that, I kind of updated all the assets that I'd purchased from the asset store. So the ultra dynamic sky, the vegetation, the auto terrain materials, and or auto landscape materials. I still call it terrain from the Unreal 3 days. But yeah, so with that, I kind of had to go back and copy over my instances and just kind of do a bit of a tidy up. You may notice that our water's looking kind of tropical again. I just have to go in there and adjust the color values and kind of mess around with it. But for now, the major differences are that we have our roads here. And as we said, we were going to run our roads on splines. The advantage of that being that we can just kind of have better control over things. But with that said, the main focus for the demo of the game will be in this area here. So all the set dressing and all the kind of attention over the next month to 2 months prior to releasing the demo will be in this area here. That's where my kind of environment art focus will be, and the first design pass will be. So I'm going to come out of the full screen mode, and we're going to talk about some of the kind of challenges and kind of some of the things that have popped up and kind of little things that we're going to have to kind of think about, and I'm going to have to come up with solutions for in the next week or so. So I'm just going to quit out of this, and we'll go into our editor mode. So here we are in the editor window. I'm just going to put up my output log and make this a little bit bigger so you guys can have a better view. So okay, first thing to notice is that compared to when we were doing the working with the same geometry in a previous version of the file, our grass doesn't tend to blend too well into the grass that's there. Even though it's using the same texture, the landscape auto material, if I can just select it and I'll go in and I'll show you. So we'll just open up the material here, but it basically uses a color variation. I believe it's using a splatter map, but with the color variation off, you can see here we have planar variation A and B, and a darkness multiplier as well, which I actually had to kind of eyeball match within the texture I'm using for the road. So with that in mind, I may have to turn the color variation off on the landscape, on the normal grass texture, but you can see we're getting some nice browns and kind of darker shades there. So what might be more what might be a better solution is to investigate how I can merge the two, or even blend from the landscape material to this vertex painted material. I'm going to do a bit of investigation into that. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, as I think it's far more important to reach in reaching the demo that we may just deactivate the color variation in the texture for the grass. So the focus is going to be, as I said, on set dressing and getting this small village area ready, and kind of for the demo rather than having different areas of the map as I planned before kind of half done, we can kind of hint towards them. But if we're using elements in this area that can be kit bashed to create villages in other areas, then that's fine. So in the coming weeks, I hope to kind of set dress this area and get it ready so that hopefully sometime in the new year we'll be doing our first game design pass. Basic stuff at first, we're not going to go crazy. I hope to kind of have enough of a budget ring fence that I can get my character artist friends involved, and maybe have at least a player model or one NPC model done. It's a first person game, so with that in mind, it might be better just to have an NPC character done, someone to interact with. But that'll all hinge on what kind of gameplay and elements we want to kind of communicate with the demo. Being a demo as well, I think it's more important to have one centerpiece area done well that communicates to the players and other designers and people who might be coming on board with the project what the game is all about. And that can be done a bit more successfully by kind of communicating one area well than a whole lot of areas that aren't all that impressive. So with that in mind, there's some key kind of how would you put it, design elements that need to be implemented in order to say, okay, well this is a true and accurate depiction of what the finished game may be like. One of those is fast travel. So that may be one of the last ones I implement, but it's definitely an important one. The reason I say it's going to be one of the last is if we're focusing on one area, that may mean that we have to kind of have an area where you can fast travel to. But with that said, I'm sure it'll be fine. So after updating a lot of this stuff, I had to reinstate a lot of the materials. So you can see here that they're not exactly perfect. They're not as good as when I had them before, but we can work with this. We can still set dress a lot of this and kind of overcome a lot of the problems. We have the basics of the house and our settlements, but even though these are kit bashed and they're kind of where I want them to be, I still have to kind of come up with props like fireplaces, lighting fixtures, furniture, and then outside, because primarily an island community would be a fishing community. I want to come up with some traditional Irish boats, curraghs, that I'm hoping to model in the next week or two. I actually have got in contact with a traditional Irish boat builder here in Ireland who's going to supply me with some drawings of boats, and I'm also going to take my source material is never too far away from me with this kind of stuff, so I'll be going visiting some local boat makers and taking pictures of their process and kind of the different stuff, because what I would really like is to have maybe some finished boats here on the top of the shoreline, kind of waiting, pulled up, where the boys would pull up the boats after a day's fishing. But also over here, I'd like to have maybe this to be the house of a boatwright. So to have one under construction maybe here at the side, with a kind of or even here, I think might be even more better, because we could have kind of an area where he works on the boat and then kind of launches it with the natural kind of harbour here beside him. Other things I'd like to do is just kind of visit local heritage centres, so I get an idea for some of the objects that would be in a house, like milk churns and kind of day-to-day stuff that we kind of would expect to see in a house of this vintage, and we are kind of taking artistic license in the design and kind of art style, but I'd still like to work a bit more of that kind of kind of heritage items into the area. Our first fast travel point will be here somewhere. I still have to decide exactly what they will look like, but I envisage them as some kind of stand-in-stone arrangement that kind of would maybe Ogham or Celtic carvings on it, kind of where each one has its own unique pattern or writing. So with that said, what I'd like to do also is kind of maybe I've been messing with the vegetation with the in the landscape auto material, so I'd like to do maybe a bit more with that. With that said, I'll also have a little path that runs up to our little lake here. Whereas before I had the forest on the west side of this lake, I'm going to go for that classic kind of Irish landscape, where this would be boggier and more rugged and weather beaten. This forest I may extend, this wooded area rather than a forest, I guess. I'll extend. I may get rid of the sand here, depending on kind of how it goes. Also the water there, some of the values, it still looks a bit tropical and almost looks like there's an oil slick there. So we'll have to do something about the colour values there, but they're all small tweaks. Again, if I can come up with a better solution for our water rather than the one we're currently using, I think it's called the beach shader, available on the asset store, the marketplace. If I can come up with a better solution, I will. However, it's going to have to be cheap, processor-wise, resource-wise, and at the moment this one's just ticking the boxes. I do have to adjust the colour values. It is looking a bit tropical right now, but that's not a problem. But I think it's very important for the mood and the atmosphere of the game that we can have an ocean that is a bit more customizable, something we can change on the fly, something that I can get to interact with the advanced the sky dome and kind of the environment effects for the sky and the weather and the time of day, so that we can trigger storms and things like that. But other than that, over the next couple of weeks, we've just kind of got back to a point now where, after implementing the advanced landscape material or auto landscape material, that we're kind of back roughly where we left off. We're kind of that 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We've broken through that kind of wall at the moment, or barrier rather, and from here on out it should be plain sailing. I think as well the fact that we're focusing on one area and doing a good job of that, it gives the project much more focus, and with self-imposed deadlines coming up, so that we can get to some of the game development events in the spring and into the summer with a workable prototype of the game and a nice demo that people can sit down and enjoy. From here on, the project is going to start bringing more than people in than me, and hopefully these development diaries help them a little bit in kind of what they're going to be getting involved with. But I'll try and include some of these people in the stream if they're willing, and we'll see what happens. But I think first of all we'll be focusing on getting some character art done, and when I know more about that, I'll introduce the character artists and give them a shout out here on the channel. And also after that, I'm interested in getting some voiceover and audio work done. Some of the kind of narration, I guess, some of the narrative. So the game will have a narrator. So I'd like to introduce the narrator early. There'll also be perhaps it might be more cost effective for me to do it, but I might hire a concept artist to do a kind of storyboard intro, maybe an intro through rather than full FMV. Use some really nice concept art to do that. So yeah, guys, this is where we are for episode 8, the 4th of December 2017, and hopefully in the next episode next week you'll be able to see some of the props and kind of some of the set dressings, and perhaps even some of the kind of traditional boats, the curraghs and things like that in the scene, and kind of moving towards the first kind of design pass for the new year. Cool, guys, thanks for tuning in. I'll chat to you all again soon. Goodbye.